Good evening, students. This is Ajarn John, and today I'm going to talk about a camping trip I have just returned from. I went camping in Peterborough for a few days and spent most of the time in the area of a national park. While walking in this park, I saw many signs advising or maybe even warning people not to feed the monkeys. Apparently, this park has a big problem with monkeys, destroying property, maybe stealing things from people, and in some cases causing physical injury. I think the problem has arisen because people feed the monkeys. Tourists who come to the park may think it's appealing or a nice thing to do to feed the monkeys. So this situation led me to think about several questions. The first one is about our relationship with wild animals. The relationship human beings have with wild animals. Wild animals I will define as animals which live in the forest or other places and are not controlled by people, compared with, say, our domestic cats and dogs or our livestock such as cows, sheep and pigs. It has always been my experience that with wild creatures, they are nearly always afraid of us. It is very difficult sometimes to even spot a wild creature in the jungle or the mountains because they try so very hard to avoid us. And this seems to clearly indicate a fairly significant fear they have of us. And it is amazing that this seems to be so universal, whether we're confronting a bird, some kind of reptile, fish, squirrels, rats, mice, and so on. They all, without exception, seem to have a strong desire to avoid us. This seems strange though, because human beings are actually quite frail creatures. Frail, F-R-A-I-L. We have neither sharp claws or sharp teeth, whereas many animals do have razor-sharp claws and razor-sharp teeth. So you might ask, what do they have to be afraid of? We are really physically quite weak compared with most animals, and our lifestyle no doubt softens us because we live in nice houses, sleep in soft beds, and get our food from the refrigerator rather than having to chase it down in the jungle or the air. Of course, we have extremely superior technology with which we have created incredible weapons, but that does not really explain the fear animals have of us, because most of the time we are not carrying any kind of weapon when we meet these creatures. So that question remains a mystery for me, and if anyone can think of an answer, I would be most interested. A secondary question is whether this fear is something learned during their lifetimes or whether it is something genetically ingrained. I think the latter can be questioned sometimes, because I am sure you have had the experience, as have I, of a young animal, especially birds, who seem to be quite friendly. might even come and sit on your hand without any apparent fear. So that is some proof in favour of the first theory, that animals learn their fear during their lifetimes. A second question which arose in my mind was, what kind of relationship should we humans have with animals? Should we, for example, try to feed them? Or is this going to create more problems? I think we first need to answer the question about why people like to feed animals, wild animals that is, before we can begin to answer this question. I have been racking my brain, R-A-C-K-I-N-G, to find an answer to this, and the best I can come up with is that people like to feel they are helping animals. Maybe we think that these animals are always hungry or starving, and by giving them food, we are doing them a big favour. I think generally the relationship we probably should have with wild creatures is a fairly distant one, because it's probably going to be dangerous for those creatures if they become too familiar and too cozy, C-O-S-Y, with human beings. They may be tempted to come too close to people, and in the end this is going to create problems which will lead to danger for them. Of course, human beings have been cultivating relationships with animals for thousands, maybe even millions of years. We love to keep pets, cats, dogs, birds, fish. Again, I'm not quite sure exactly why. Maybe because we think they are cute. Maybe because we thrill in the power of controlling another creature. Maybe because we think we get some kind of love from these animals and some escape from our own loneliness. In answer to the question whether we should feed wild animals, my general opinion would be no. I think unfortunately our sentimentality can probably lead to more problems than benefits. The few morsels of food the animals may get, morsels, M-O-R-S-E-L-S, may not be worth the risk they bring to themselves and also maybe to us, unless we are prepared to take control over their lives, as we have done with animals in zoos, for example. I think it's best for us not to interfere in the wild world. The problems with the monkeys in the Thai National Park are relatively minor, but in other parts of the world, such as North America, for example, there are far more serious problems. Many stories of people being eaten alive by bears, which have become too familiar with human beings and maybe also expect to be fed. And if they are not fed, they may decide to make a meal of you. However, everywhere I have been in the world, people love to feed wild animals, and I don't think that is going to stop anytime soon. But a swift bite to the neck by a monkey, possibly with rabies, may make people think twice about their actions. Make them think twice about their actions. And rabies, R-A-B-I-E-S. One last area I want to discuss in this matter is about our consciousness and the consciousness of the wild creatures. We as human beings have a sense of self, which gives us feelings of pleasure and pain, happiness, misery, shame and pride, love and hate. And I think we incorrectly project these feelings onto the animals we come into conflict with or come into contact with. People can't but help themselves projecting their own feelings onto these creatures, which I think is almost totally erroneous. Even your pet dog, who you may think loves you or likes you, I suspect the dog's apparent emotions for you are just about security and being fed by you. I doubt whether there is any real emotion going on in the mind of an animal, as we might compare with that of a human being. But you may disagree with me on this, especially if you are a dog or a cat lover. You may have your own strong feelings about this. Anyway, I had a great time in the national park, camping and getting close to nature again, doing some nice outdoor walking. It was really great to get away from the city, away from the noise and the cars and the concrete, to the world of green and fresh air and, thank God, very few people. What about you? Have you ever been camping? Do you like the outdoors? Most of the time when I tell Thai people that I'm going camping in the forest, they ask me, "Are you not afraid?" And my reply is that I think most of the things we should be afraid of are in the city, not in the countryside. Certainly not in the forests, which have very few, if any, people. The very few people I met on my walks were, for example, a shepherd and his family. He had a herd of cows he was looking after, herd, H-E-R-D. When I asked him how many cows he had, he said about 90. When he said about, I was a little surprised, because I know how valuable one cow is, so I jokingly said to him, "So if I steal one cow, you won't know if there is one missing?" He smiled and then said actually he knew every cow by name. And as there were over 90 cows, I found this quite difficult to believe. But on noticing he had a very large knife tucked into his belt, I didn't feel it wise to challenge his statement. He was with his wife, 11-year-old boy, and another man who I guess was probably a brother or an uncle. It seemed like the whole family were following this herd of cows around the whole day in the incredibly hot weather we have been having the last few days. A very hardy lifestyle, hardy, H-A-R-D-Y. The only other people I would bump into would be fishermen if there was a small lake in the area or a river, and the occasional farmer. But when I met them, they were usually sleeping in the shade, avoiding the hot sun. Okay, students, bye for now.